There is a man walking through the world right now, strong in body perhaps, clever in mind, maybe even successful by society's definitions, and yet he feels unseen, disregarded, disrespected. Not because the world is blind, but because he has yet to open his own eyes. Welcome back, wisdom seekers. If you're here, it's not by accident. You've felt it, haven't you? The quiet truth that something is missing. Not in your bank account, not on your resume, but in the space between who you are and who you were meant to become. Let me ask you this. What if respect, the real kind, not the applause of crowds or the shallow admiration of strangers, what if that kind of respect is not earned by doing more, but by removing the very things that are silently draining you of your power? Because the greatest men in history, the most revered thinkers, the warriors, the philosophers, the kings, they didn't achieve greatness through addition. They achieved it through subtraction, through the relentless removal of weakness, vice, and illusion. And that, my friend, is the path we begin today. This video will not give you a quick dopamine hit. It is not filled with flashy edits or empty motivational slogans. It is a journey, a long, introspective, and brutally honest journey into the 6 habits that, if not removed, will block you from ever being respected by others, and more importantly, by yourself. We walk this path with the silent guidance of the Stoics, Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, Seneca, men who lived not for approval, but for virtue. Men who understood that discipline, character, and inner order were the true currencies of respect. As Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." Make sure to like and subscribe if you haven't yet. Every like, subscribe helps us continue our mission of sharing knowledge. And leave a comment below and share your opinion on these habits, or tell me which one resonates with you the most. Ready to unlock more wisdom? Let's get started. Habit 1. The disease of self-pity. Imagine a man. He wakes up each morning, and before his feet even touch the cold floor, his mind is already whispering the same poisonous thoughts. Life isn't fair. I've been dealt a bad hand. People don't see me. No one understands what I'm going through. These thoughts aren't screamed. They aren't dramatic. They are quiet, subtle, and precisely for that reason, they are deadly. Self-pity is the most seductive form of self-sabotage. It cloaks itself in the illusion of justice. You feel wronged, so you feel justified. So you believe you're entitled to sympathy. You've been overlooked, so you believe you are owed attention. But here's the brutal truth, wisdom seeker. The world does not reward the man who feels sorry for himself. It rewards the man who endures, the man who transforms pain into strength, the man who suffers without showcasing his wounds like trophies. And this is not an opinion, it is a law of nature. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher king of Rome, faced unbearable loss. He lost many of his children in infancy. He ruled an empire riddled with plague, betrayal, and endless war. Yet never once did he allow himself the indulgence of self-pity. Instead, he wrote these words: "Choose not to be harmed, and you won't feel harmed. Don't feel harmed, and you haven't been." This is not coldness. This is clarity, because when you dwell in self-pity, you mistake your wounds for your identity. You become addicted to victimhood. You wear it like armor, but it's not protecting you, it's caging you. A man trapped in self-pity cannot grow. He cannot rise. He cannot command respect, because others can smell it. Self-pity has an odor. It's the scent of weakness, of a man who has surrendered to life rather than taken it by the throat. And people, whether consciously or not, recoil from that scent. You see, self-pity doesn't just damage your external reputation. It corrupts the soul. It replaces courage with complaint. It transforms resilience into resentment. Instead of facing reality with discipline, you sulk in the shadows, hoping someone will come to rescue you. But no one's coming. No one should. Because the Stoics taught that no man is more powerful than the one who accepts full responsibility for his life. Without excuses, without cries for mercy, without waiting for the world to change. Seneca once said, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." Think about that. So many of the things that bring you down, that fill you with grief and frustration, are not what happened, but what you've told yourself about what happened. You narrate your life like a tragedy, and then wonder why no one sees you as a hero. But here is the secret, the beginning of all transformation. You can change the narrative. You can stand up today, right now, and say, I will no longer indulge in self-pity. I will not tell myself stories of how hard my life is. I will face the cold, harsh truth of existence like a warrior. Because life is hard. It was never meant to be easy. The Stoics never promised ease. They promised freedom, and that freedom is only possible when you accept what is and act with virtue in the face of it. Self-pity is not strength. It's the illusion of comfort in the prison of helplessness. You don't need it. You don't deserve it. What you deserve is to stand tall, even when the world is on fire around you. What you deserve is to walk through pain without broadcasting it, to suffer with quiet dignity, and to rise, not in vengeance, but in purpose. There is a reason why the most respected men in history are often the most stoic in their suffering. They didn't cry out for pity. They didn't beg for attention. They bore their pain like armor. Because they understood that strength is not shown by how loudly you can complain, but by how deeply you can endure in silence. So if you want to be respected, truly, deeply, and permanently, this is where it begins. Kill the habit of self-pity. No one will respect you until you do. And perhaps even more important, you will not respect yourself. Habit 2, the craving for external validation. There is a man whose soul is dying slowly and no one can see it. He wakes up not with a desire to create, to contribute, to conquer his inner chaos, but with a singular, consuming obsession. What will they think of me today? He dresses not to reflect who he is, but to impress people he doesn't even respect. He speaks not from conviction, but from calculation, carefully measuring every word to avoid disapproval. He doesn't act, he performs. And every applause he earns makes him emptier than the last. This is the man trapped in the prison of external validation. And this prison, though invisible, has tighter bars than steel and thicker walls than concrete. It is a psychological and spiritual cage, and its locks are made from your own fears. To crave validation is to surrender your sovereignty. It is to hand over the keys of your self-worth to strangers who don't know your heart, your history, or your values. It is to say, I will only feel good about myself if they approve. And in doing so, you become a slave, not just to their opinions, but to your own insecurity. The Stoics warned against this dependence over 2,000 years ago. Epictetus said it plainly, if you wish to be independent, do not desire what depends on others, and what is more dependent than your worth being tied to someone else's reaction. But this addiction is subtle. It doesn't show up like a disease. It shows up like ambition. You tell yourself you're networking. You convince yourself you're building your brand. But beneath that mask, the truth is bleeding through. You are terrified of being rejected. You are terrified of being unknown, unseen, misunderstood. And that terror is guiding your life far more than any virtue. Respect cannot be born from this place, because a man who needs everyone's approval has no identity of his own. He shapeshifts to match the room he walks into. He nods when he wants to speak. He agrees when he feels resistance. He hides his real opinions, his real desires, his real nature, because he believes that who he is not enough. But the truth is exactly the opposite. Who you really are is the only thing that can be respected. Not your performance, not your mask, not the version of you that's been sanded down for mass consumption. The only version of you worthy of respect is the one that stands in front of the world and says, this is me. Take it or leave it. And yes, some will leave it. They'll judge you, mock you, misunderstand you. That is the price. That is the tax for being real. But what you gain in exchange is something priceless: self-respect, integrity, a spine. The man who chases validation lives in fear. He is always watching, always adapting, always calculating how to be more likable, more popular, more acceptable. But the man who rejects that craving, he becomes dangerous. He becomes magnetic. Because nothing is more attractive than authenticity. Nothing is more respected than someone who is unapologetically aligned with what he believes, what he values, and who he is. Seneca wrote, "A man is unhappy though he reign the world if he does not consider himself happy." Consider that for a moment. You could conquer every room, dominate every social circle, rack up likes, followers, applause, and still be utterly hollow inside. Because none of it matters if it doesn't come from you. And this is the deeper wound, the thing no one tells you. The more you chase validation, the less you believe you deserve it. Each time you mold yourself to fit someone else's expectations, you're quietly sending a message to your own soul. Who I really am is not worthy. And that message compounds. It grows. Until one day, even when you're alone, you look in the mirror and see a stranger. So what's the alternative? Courage. The courage to stand alone in a world obsessed with being liked. The courage to speak unpopular truths. The courage to walk away from applause if it costs you your integrity. This is the Stoic path. Not to be emotionless, but to be unshakable. Not to be cold, but to be centered. To walk through the fire of public opinion and emerge not burned, but tempered, stronger, clearer, more defined. To crave validation is to be ruled by the crowd. To reject that craving is to lead your own life. Remove this habit. Rip it out like a weed from the soil of your soul. Because as long as you are looking outward for permission to exist, you will never build the kind of presence that commands respect. And believe this, you were not born to be liked by everyone. You were born to become someone so real that those who do respect you do so fully, not for the mask you wear, but for the man you are. Habit 3. Indulging in distraction. There is a modern plague infecting the minds of men, not with violence, not with noise, but with something far more dangerous, the gentle, constant whisper of distraction. He reaches for his phone before his eyes are fully open. His thumb knows the path of least resistance. Endless scrolling, notifications, the soft, glowing drug of stimulation. He doesn't realize it yet, but something sacred is being stolen from him. Not his time, but his attention. And where your attention goes, your life follows. You must understand this, wisdom seeker. Distraction is not just a bad habit. It is a spiritual illness. It fractures the mind, weakens the will, and makes a man forget who he is. It's not just that he's wasting time. It's that slowly, imperceptibly, he is becoming someone who can no longer sit with himself. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Nowhere you can go is more peaceful, more free of interruptions than your own soul." But how many men today even know the soul? How many have sat with themselves in stillness, with no device, no noise, no stimulation? Very few. Because the silence terrifies them. Because in that silence there are no distractions to hide behind. Only the raw truth of their thoughts, their regrets, their doubts, their inner chaos. Distraction has become their shield. It is easier to open an app than to open your own wounds. Easier to scroll than to sit with your purpose. Easier to binge than to build. But what's convenient is rarely what's transformative. And respect, the kind that echoes beyond a single room, the kind that is earned in the deepest part of others and yourself, requires presence. Presence of mind, presence of intention, presence of soul. And distraction is the antithesis of presence. It is a slow suicide of the self. The Stoics, long before the invention of screens and dopamine loops, already understood this. They called it dissipation, the scattering of attention, the soul being torn in many directions at once. Seneca warned against it in his letters. To be everywhere is to be nowhere. Think of that. How many places has your mind already traveled today? How many thoughts have you chased? How many moments have you truly lived? When you indulge in distraction, you are not only wasting time, you are training yourself to be weak. You are teaching your brain to avoid depth. You are reinforcing the habit of escape, and a man who constantly escapes his own mind will never be strong enough to face the world, let alone master it. Distraction destroys discipline. It destroys direction. It turns a man from a sharp spear into a blunt stone, dull, aimless, ineffective. The distracted man doesn't even realize how far he's fallen, because it's not a collapse, it's a slow descent, one video at a time, one click at a time, one mindless hour at a time, until one day, he looks in the mirror and sees a stranger with untapped potential and no legacy. You must understand, focus is not just a productivity tool, it is a moral and spiritual commitment. When you choose focus, you are choosing life. When you remove distraction, you are telling your future self, I will not abandon you. And it's not about never using a phone. It's not about rejecting technology. It's about mastering it, about using it like a sword, not letting it use you like a leash. It's about reclaiming your time, your mind, and your mission. Because respect is born in men who build, men who create, men who go deep. And no one builds anything of value while being pulled in 50 directions. No one writes a philosophy or constructs a vision or raises an empire while checking their phone every 6 minutes. The world is starving for men of depth, men of silence, men of focused attention, because depth is becoming rare, and what is rare is respected. So if you want to become that man, the man who walks into a room and commands presence, not because he's loud, but because his mind is still, his purpose clear, then you must kill distraction at the root. Discipline is what separates the man who is respected from the one who is pitied. But discipline cannot exist in the same body as a man who is addicted to escape. So make your choice, not just once, but every single day. When your fingers reach for the phone, when your mind craves a break, when your spirit begs to be numbed, pause and ask yourself, what am I really running from? Because the moment you stop running, you begin to rise. And in that rising, respect begins, not from others, but from yourself. Habit 4. Speaking more than you act. There is a man who always has something to say. He fills the room with opinions, projections, explanations. He knows what should be done, how others should behave, what the world needs. He speaks of ambition, of change, of goals. But behind the curtain of his words, there is nothing. Just air. No movement, no results, no substance, only noise. This man is not respected. He is tolerated at best, avoided at worst. Because deep down we all know, the man who speaks endlessly without action is a man who fears the weight of real commitment. To speak more than you act is to live in illusion. It is to substitute expression for execution. It's easier to talk about discipline than to live it. Easier to say you're going to change than to confront the pain of transformation. But words, unbacked by motion, are empty currency. And every time you speak without acting, you devalue yourself a little more. The Stoics were not men of endless speeches. They were men of brevity, clarity, and action. Epictetus told his students, don't explain your philosophy, embody it. That one sentence alone is a sword. Don't tell the world who you are, show it. Let your life be so aligned, so disciplined, so intentional that no words are necessary. Respect follows those who act in silence more than those who speak in noise. Because action is rare, it is costly, it requires discipline, courage, sacrifice. But talk is free, and what costs nothing is worth nothing. Yet so many fall into this habit, not because they are evil, but because they crave significance, and talking about your dreams, your virtues, your plans gives you the illusion of progress. You feel a little rush, a sense of movement, but it's a lie. Nothing is moving. You're still in the same place, only now with an inflated ego and an unfulfilled promise to yourself. Every time you say, I'm going to change, and don't, you teach your mind that your own words are meaningless. You destroy the bridge between intention and reality. You become fluent in the language of delay. And here's the brutal irony. The more you talk about what you will do, the less likely you are to do it. Because speaking gives your mind a taste of accomplishment. And that taste is enough to kill your hunger. That's why the Stoics practiced internal discipline. They kept their struggles private. Their goals were not public declarations, but quiet fires that burned in the furnace of solitude. To be respected, you must become a man whose actions echo louder than his words. You must learn to carry your silence like a sword. Move in shadows, build without applause. Become someone whose work speaks so clearly that your mouth doesn't have to. This does not mean being mute. It means being measured. It means knowing that your words carry weight only when backed by action. It means speaking when it matters and only when it adds value. The man who speaks only after he's acted, he is the one people lean in to hear. Because his words are rare, and what is rare is revered. Seneca once said, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it. And nowhere is time more wasted than in endless declarations with no execution." Men waste years in the fantasy of their own voices. They convince themselves that talking is movement, that sharing is progress. But the man who truly moves forward does so with his feet, not his tongue. There is immense power in restraint, in letting your results speak for you, in walking into a room and knowing you don't need to prove anything. That is the quiet power of the Stoic. That is the man who is respected not for what he promises, but for what he consistently produces. You want to become that man? Then you must remove this habit from your soul. Tear it out. Refuse to speak your intentions unless you are ready to execute them. Train yourself to be silent in the planning and violent in the doing. Let your discipline become your language. Let your life become your philosophy, because the man who lives his truth doesn't need to speak it, and in that silence, earned, steady, unshakable, respect begins to grow. Habit 5. Neglecting your inner world. There is a man who builds everything but himself. His career grows, his status rises, his calendar overflows with meetings, tasks, and achievements. From the outside he seems solid, accomplished, even enviable. But inside, chaos, turmoil, a silent, growing emptiness he cannot name. He has built a fortress out of his life, but inside the walls there is nothing but noise. And this is the great mistake of the modern man. The belief that the outer world is all that matters, that success is measured in possessions, that discipline is only physical, that building wealth, status, and a reputation is enough. It is not, because no matter how powerful you become in the eyes of the world, if your inner world is neglected, you are living on borrowed time. Neglecting your inner world is not just a spiritual failure, it is a practical one. It is the foundation on which all your achievements stand. And if the foundation is cracked, it is only a matter of time before the entire structure collapses. The Stoics knew this. They were not monks retreating from the world. They were emperors, generals, advisors, teachers, men who lived deeply in the world, but refused to be ruled by it. They understood that the soul of a man must be cultivated with more care than his home, his business, or his public image. Marcus Aurelius ruled the Roman Empire, yet he still carved out time every day to reflect, to write, to return to himself. Why? Because he knew the battlefield outside was only half the war. The real war was within, against pride, against distraction, against impulse, against despair. He wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Neglecting your inner world is the surest way to become weak while appearing strong. You may lift weights, you may earn money, you may wear the symbols of success, but you'll be brittle. Cracked from within, because you never learned to sit with your thoughts. You never questioned your motives, you never confronted your fears, you never cultivated silence, discipline, or depth in your own mind. And so you become reactive. You are driven by what others say. You are offended easily. You are rattled by small things. You panic when plans fall apart. You crumble under pressure. Not because you are inherently weak, but because your soul has been left unfed, untouched, untrained. This is why Stoicism is not a theory, it is a daily practice. Just as you train your body, you must train your soul, with reflection, with solitude, with silence, with brutal honesty, with virtue. Most men run from this. They hide in productivity, in goals, in noise, because looking inward is painful. You might find things you don't want to see, regrets, wounds, anger, but ignoring them doesn't make them disappear, it makes them stronger. And one day, they will surface. They will sabotage your relationships, poison your peace, sabotage your potential, not because you are cursed, but because you refuse to look within. Seneca warned us, "No man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself." And adversity does not only exist outside, it lives in the hidden corners of your inner world, in your impulses, your patterns, your buried fears. Facing these, examining them, confronting them, that is the real test of strength. And do not be fooled. Cultivating your inner world is not weakness. It is not soft. It is the hardest thing a man can do, because it demands vulnerability. It demands that you stop lying to yourself, that you stop blaming the world, and begin taking total responsibility for the state of your soul. You must ask yourself questions that pierce. Why do I react this way? What am I still carrying from my past? What am I afraid to admit to myself? Where am I being dishonest? Where have I betrayed my own values? And you must sit with the answers, not run from them. That is the fire. That is the forge where men are made. Because a man who neglects his inner world will always be at the mercy of the outer one. But the man who orders his soul, who knows himself, governs himself, disciplines his thoughts, and aligns his actions with his principles, he becomes immovable, unshakable, respected. Respect begins on the inside, not when people praise you, but when you sit in silence and feel your conscience is clean, when your thoughts are your allies, not your enemies, when your soul is not a stranger but a sanctuary. And so, wisdom seeker, if you wish to become someone others admire, not just for what you do but for who you are, then you must begin within. You must sit with yourself. You must confront yourself, and you must build yourself from the inside out. No one will do it for you. No one can. This is your sacred responsibility, your quiet duty. Remove the habit of neglecting your inner world, because the man who builds himself inwardly becomes unbreakable outwardly. And that man is respected wherever he goes. Habit 6. Living without a code. There's a quiet tragedy that plays out every day in the lives of men who seem to be moving, building, and advancing. A tragedy not born from violence or loss, but from aimlessness. A man without a code is like a ship without a compass. He may be in motion, he may have wind in his sails, but he is lost, and eventually he will crash. To live without a code is to drift, to be pulled by the tides of opinion, comfort, fear, and impulse. It is to be a man without an anchor, and no matter how strong or skilled or intelligent he may be, without that anchor, without a clear, unwavering set of principles, he will always be at the mercy of whatever surrounds him. This is the final and most fatal habit, the refusal to define, know, and live by your own code. Most men never even stop to consider it. They adopt fragments of values from their surroundings, parents, media, friends, convenience. They live by borrowed beliefs, stitched together from half-remembered quotes and vague ideas of right and wrong. But nothing is solid, nothing is defined. So when temptation comes, they bend. When pressure rises, they break. When life gets loud, they go silent, because they have no inner compass, only reactions. But the man who lives by a code, he does not waver. He does not lie awake wondering what to do when the storm comes. He already decided, long before the crisis, long before the chaos. He decided who he is. He wrote the law upon his own soul. The Stoics lived by this deeply. Marcus Aurelius, emperor of the greatest empire on earth, still began each morning reminding himself of what kind of man he intended to be. He knew that without daily anchoring, even an emperor could be ruled by ego, by fear, by desire. His journal, Meditations, is not the writing of a ruler commanding others, but a warrior commanding himself. His code was internal and unbreakable. What is your code? What are the few, non-negotiable principles by which you live, no matter what? Do you know them? Have you written them? Do you return to them? Or do you simply hope that when life tests you, you'll somehow rise? That is not strength, that is superstition. A code is not a list of motivational phrases. It is a set of binding laws you place upon yourself, voluntarily. Because you know that freedom without discipline is chaos, and power without morality is corruption. A man without a code can gain the world and lose himself. Living without a code is why most men become followers, not of someone wise, but of the moment, of whatever gives relief, of whatever feels good. And so they are always chasing, never choosing, always reacting, never creating. Their lives are full of movement, but no meaning. Their hearts beat, but without direction. And here's the truth no one tells them. Without a code, you do not belong to yourself. You belong to your urges, to the media, to the crowd, to the mood of the day. You are a puppet whose strings are pulled by forces you don't even see. You think you're making decisions, but you are only responding to the loudest thing in the room. Seneca wrote, "If you don't know to which port you are sailing, no wind is favorable." That is the wisdom of a man who understood this habit. Because without clear values, clear direction, clear purpose, you cannot make good decisions. You cannot live well. You will spend your life drifting from one idea to the next, one goal to the next, one failure to the next, without ever touching something eternal. A code gives you form. It gives your life structure. It gives your actions clarity. And most importantly, it earns you respect. Not because others understand your code, but because they feel it. They see it in your decisions, in the way you move, in your consistency, your certainty, your refusal to betray yourself. You do not need to preach your code. In fact, you shouldn't. Live it. Bleed for it. Die by it if you must. But never live without it. So how do you begin? You look at your life and ask, what kind of man do I refuse to be? What kind of man must I become? What values do I protect, especially when they cost me? What truths do I serve, especially when they are unpopular? And then you write. You write not to be poetic, but to be precise. You reduce your beliefs to something sharp, something unforgettable, and then you test them, daily, in silence, in action, in failure, in victory. This becomes your law, your identity, your shield, and it separates you from the masses. Because the world does not need more agreeable men, more drifting men, more loud, shallow, easily broken men. It needs men of code, men who can stand alone, men who do not fold, men who live with such integrity that even those who disagree with them still respect them. That is who you must become. Remove the habit of living without a code, and write your life like a warrior carves words into stone, not because the world demands it, but because your soul does. And with this final habit, the transformation begins. These 6 habits, if left unchecked, will eat away at your strength, your clarity, your purpose, and ultimately your respect. But if removed, ripped out by the roots, burned, replaced with virtue, then what remains will not just be a man. It will be a force, a presence, a soul aligned with something greater than opinion or pleasure or popularity. A man worthy of respect, not by chance, not by accident, but by deliberate construction. Build that man, wisdom seeker. The world will feel him before he speaks, and they will respect him because he respects himself.